Hello, everyone. Welcome to Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger. My name is Brandon Adams. This is Dog Nation's recruiting insider, Jeff Sintel, fresh off a victory on the field for Georgia against Florida. Now turning our attention to how victories might continue to unfold for the class of 2020, maybe even the class of 2021 as well. We'll touch on all of that over the course of our show here today. That means checking in on top targets as per usual. But Jeff, before we get to possible commit watching the class of 2021, let's talk a little bit about five-star cornerback Kelee Ringo, a guy you had a chance to catch up with. I know some folks read about that at dognation.com and kind of followed along with the forum at forum.dognation.com. But Ringo is one of the centerpiece names for the remainder of Georgia with its 2020 class, and he provided with you a little bit of a preview about what might still be to come for him.
Yeah, guys. First of all, hey, Brandon, looking sharp after that Florida win.
Feeling pretty good.
I think he feels like Ponce de Leon, man, and found some youth down there.
Feeling pretty good.
Between the rib slabs there in St. Simon's Island. But Kelee Ringo, he's been the number one on Dog Nation's top targets list for almost as long as Brandon has wanted to beat the Florida Gators. Almost as long. The 2020 marquee target, we spoke to him at his All-American Bowl ceremony. We learned a few things. He's going to take all five of his officials and all that stuff.
Yeah, we'll let him. Let's start with that right here. First of all, that timeline for what's still to come for him and kind of where things are going. A lot of Georgia fans ready to get a big name commitment. When it comes to Kelee Ringo, you might be waiting just a little bit longer. Here's what Ringo told Jeff in Dog Nation.
And the plan is to make my finish on the American Bowl.
What's next on your visit schedule?
For my top 5 schools, Oregon, Georgia, Texas, Alabama, and Ohio State.
Are all those going to get one, you think?
Yes, sir.
So really pretty, I guess, workmanlike, I would describe, in terms of how he's deliberating through this process. You know, he listed you off his top 5 schools there. Said it looks like all of those are going to get official visits. Oregon's already got an official visit. I guess, what did you make of that process? And for those people who may have had that go by before they could hear it, remind us one more time who those top 5 are for Kelee Ringo, what the visit schedule looks like the rest of the way. A lot of these, I guess, he hasn't even scheduled yet.
Yeah, I think they're not scheduled yet. They're kind of to be determined. I think the big point that Kelee made in his comments is he only had one bye week during the season, and he used that bye week to go see Oregon on his official visit. And he said during our conversation that he had hoped to get out to Georgia and give Georgia an unofficial visit during the season, but that just wasn't possible with his scheduling. And he also rattled off his top 5 schools. That's Alabama, Ohio State, Oregon. They've already gotten one. Texas and Georgia. A lot of people think that this is a Texas, Georgia, maybe an Oregon type mix, but he says he's going to give official visits because he can take all 5, and he's going to give one of those to Alabama and to Ohio State as well.
Yeah, the one thing that we know about him, he's just sort of, I've assumed this, but when you read him at dognation.com or hear him right here, you kind of are left to once again say the same thing. He enjoys the idea of the recruiting process. I don't even know that these visits are about deliberating about where you want to go to school, because ultimately I believe that Ringo is probably going to end up at Georgia. I don't think these are fact-finding missions necessarily as much as they are, hey, the future version of myself, when I'm 45 years old, I can look back on this and say I had the recruiting experience that I always dreamed of having, dreaming of doing this for an all-star game or dreaming of taking these official visits, and why would you not want to have the red carpet rolled out for you at these various schools? That's really the impression that I get from Kelee Ringo is that he's more interested in, and I don't mean this in any way disparaging him, but it just seems like a reading of the situation. He's more interested in taking the visits than he is in finding out more about some of these other schools.
Well, I think people are, and that's a nice shirt there, by the way, for Kelee Ringo.
Nice.
I think Brandon's got one of those. He had one of those in downtown Jacksonville.
Come on now, Kelee. I like that a lot now.
But so speaking of sunflowers, he's a guy that comes out of the state of Arizona. He's not going to enroll early. He's going to be a May, June enrollee, wherever he winds up. So, Brandon, I know folks are sitting there going, Jeff, Brandon, man, come on, give me something. It's been 82 days since Georgia picked up a commitment for the class of 2020. And for Kelee Ringo, it looks to him like he's still got a lot of time. He's got all of December. He's got the rest of November. They're going to play in a unique new playoff format where the best of the best, regardless of classifications, are going to duel on the field in Arizona. And that's different for a school that's won 6 straight state titles. Now they're going to have their big boy britches on as well. So there's a lot of time left for Kelee Ringo. He's going to make his decisions. We covered earlier in the show at the All-American Bowl. Bowl.
Any truth to the fact that Kevin Sumlin, University of Arizona, would be just the number 3 seed in that tournament? Is there any truth to that?
Depends on what they're throwing around the quarterback, whether they're putting the ball in the air. But with Kelee, the thing there is you wonder if he will sign during the early period. Sounds very likely that he would sign somewhere during the early period and then keep that zip upper lip emoji for a few weeks until he tells the world on January the 4th.
Well, let's hear a couple more things from Ringo. We'll get to in a moment his feelings on UGA, but first, in terms of, I thought this was a good question. All right, so you're out there, you're taking visits. The recruitment is presumably still open there because of that. What's it going to take the rest of the way to win this recruiting battle with Kelee Ringo? Here's more of what Ringo had to say about that.
The school that signs Kelee Ringo is going to do what over the next 2 months?
Just continue to stay in contact with me and just continue build a great relationship with me. Go on my visits and stuff like that. Just like the atmosphere. And just as soon as when I made my decision, I'm going to see if that place feels like home to me, and that would be the door right there.
So he obviously references the relationships, the contact that he's been having, wants to maintain that. Once again, he doesn't come across, I don't want to read too much into what our small audio clips, because his larger thought process may not be fully contained within one soundbite. But it certainly doesn't sound like there's a lot left he still wants to see. He enjoys the contact he has had with the various programs, expects that to continue. But it doesn't sound like this is a guy who still needs to learn a lot more.
Well, he basically just says, keep recruiting me hard, keep showing me interest, keep reaching out. And he feels like he says that balance sheet, that the more he's reached out to, the more he's contacted, the more he's shown that he's valued, the more love he feels from a school.
One more I want you to hear specifically on his feelings about the University of Georgia. Ringo did talk about that, including some feelings for the head coach as well. Here's Kelee Ringo again.
I like the staff and just the little vibe over there. I've been to G there, and that's kind of like a game vibe. I wanted to be able to get out to a game, but I wasn't able to this year. Georgia always does good things over there. Coach Kirby Smart's a great coach. He was actually a DB there himself, so I like what he's doing with the program.
So how much of the fact that obviously Kirby Smart, not just a defensive backs-minded coach, but a guy that was a good defensive back at UGA, you hear Ringo mention that there. How much do you think that really plays in the recruiting trail, that Smart understands the position, has a history of coaching guys up at the position? DeAndre Baker was a Thorpe Award winner. Eric Stokes played the game at an incredibly high level. I think you could say that DJ Daniel, Tyson Campbell, guys like that have been effectively developed. How much of that reputation really is out there the way that Ringo seems to echo that?
I think what matters here is he's a defensive back, and this was a coach that was a former defensive back. And when he says yada, 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 Georgia is great about this, Georgia that, well, he lived that life. He's now coaching at his alma mater. He has some national championship pedigree and trophies on his resume as well. So when he speaks to Ringo about Georgia and the benefits of Georgia, he speaks from a place of authority because he's been there and he's got Georgia developing defensive backs right in the circumference of the nation's top programs year in and year out.
It's Before the Hedges presented by Kroger. We're going to check in on top targets here in just a moment. Also, commitment watch for the class of 2021. We'll deal with that there as well. Before that, quick reminder from our friends at Kroger that you can gather together for an open house at your local Kroger. That's this Saturday. It's November 9th is the date, noon to 5 p.m. the time frame there. You can sample seasonal favorites. You can also plan a big party with deli, bakery, and produce favorites. You can shop on hundreds of gift cards for that hard-to-buy family member there in your life, and obviously we all have one of those. You can also pick up some holiday classics like wreaths, centerpieces, all kinds of fun holiday decor. You can get all of that at your local Kroger. It's this Saturday from noon to 5 p.m. for the Kroger Open House, kind of usher in the holiday season there at a Kroger near you. All right, Before the Hedges is presented by Kroger here. Jeff, I saw you write about this at the forum at forum.dognation.com. A little bit of attention being paid right now to a 2021 prospect who's made some news pretty quickly and seemingly drawn some Georgia interest. What can you tell us about this?
So it makes me think, folks, I want to bring you the name. First of all, North Carolina.
Yeah.
He's a four-star offensive tackle, I think where he's rated is. He's an offensive guard. And this young man, you look at that Kroger logo and you see that new Kroger logo with a big OG there in the middle. That's what trains my eye to go to, is a big OG in the middle, and that's an offensive guard.
Okay.
His name is Jared Wilson. He's out of the state of North Carolina, the same high school program which produced KJ Henry, the Clemson commit of a couple years ago. And this is a young man, if you watch his social media, there's a lot of Georgia across his social media, a lot of tweets, a lot of retweets, a lot of likes. He is set to make his announcement. He even shared that in a recent tweet, The commitment is going to come tomorrow morning, and it's going to be on November the 7th. It's a special day for him and his family, and I'd look for that news to drop by Mr. Jared Wilson right around 8 a.m., Brandon.
Wow.
So that would be on coffee cup number 3 for you or something like
But
that?
at that point in time, I've already had my coffee. I'm well on my way for the day. But exciting to see that Georgia might be in the mix here for 2021 offensive lineman from a program that's produced, as you said, high-level players before, KJ Henry among the rest. So interesting that this is going to – Georgia fans have been just kind of on wait for some legit recruiting news now here for a little while. Wilson obviously has a chance to provide that. Tell us a bit more about him as a player.
So he's got a final group, which sounds like Clemson and Georgia, probably the home state school. North Carolina is also drawing interest, especially with kind of a bounce-back, get-right season there from Mac Brown. But Brandon, he's about 6'3.5", about 320. You look at his film, the thing that jumps out to me is Mauler, great feet. He visited Georgia on June the 9th, and then he earned the offer from Georgia after a team camp workout on June the 11th. So he was offered. And then I think he's came back for at least, Brandon, the Notre Dame game, and he was also there for the Kentucky game as well. And to be there for Kentucky for that game, sitting through the mist and misery, some smart football men have actually called it a monsoon that everybody sat through there.
I've heard that.
Got to watch out for one Jared Wilson. Big guy, raw guy too. He's only been playing football about 2 or 3 years, so he's somebody to look at. And the 2021 class, Brandon, should Jared decide to go with Georgia tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., then that would be class number 3, member number 3 of the Georgia class. And slowly but surely, just basically since this football season started, Georgia started adding potential 2021 targets. And for Georgia, let's make no mistake, I think the evaluation here is a guard or as a center here for Jared. I don't think he's going to be an offensive tackle guy. He doesn't kind of have that reach and arms that Georgia likes to find among its tackles. And for that Georgia 2021 offensive line class, there are names like Amarius Mims. There's names like Micah Morris. There's names like Terrence Ferguson. There's also Donovan Jackson out of Texas, the young man who basically shut down the opening as an offensive lineman this year, even with Big Tate Ratledge there. He's another top target for Georgia in that junior class of 2021 offensive linemen.
All right, so that's very interesting to keep your eye on. That Jared Wilson set to make an announcement tomorrow, a part of what could be a crowded field, as Jeff said, of 2021 offensive linemen for the University of Georgia, as the following recruiting cycle continues to take shape. It's before the Hedges are presented by Kroger. That is Jeff Sentell. I'm Brandon Adams. And now let's turn our attention back to 2020 here for a moment and take a look at the top targets for the class of 2020. We talked a lot about Ringo a moment ago. My guess is we'll still see Kelee Ringo at the top of our top targets list here for the class of 2020. And Jeff, there was a question in our YouTube comment section a moment ago about why it is that so many Georgia fans are so confident that Ringo's going to end up at Georgia when his own words don't necessarily suggest that. So they don't suggest the opposite. They just kind of leave it more open to the imagination. So, Jeff, for people who may not follow this as closely as some others do, why is it that so many Georgia fans are so confident about Ringo?
Well, I guess they just followed the crystal balls instead of maybe also following the visits there with Ringo. He's made at least 4 trips to Georgia this cycle. There was the junior day, there was the G day, there was the scavenger hunt, and there was the cookout. He was there during the slip and slide, and so there's a familiarity there. There's the friendship and familiarity with his mother, her very pro-Georgia tweets and social media messages on her Instagram as well. The phenomenal player that he is as well. I just think that the follow the visits makes a lot of sense there when you watch, because really for the longest time it was Texas for Kelee Ringo. His entire high school staff, I think, spent a week there during Texas's spring practices way back in March and April. All of a sudden, he started taking bunches of visits to Georgia and started looking really closely at Georgia. And it became Texas, Georgia, Georgia, Texas. And then over the summer, some momentum kind of ensued there. And one final thought, Brandon, just out of curiosity, if you woke up with a faux top targets one week and Kelee Ringo was like nowhere to be seen, would you give me some Fred Sanford heart palpitations?
I think it may be one of these things where I've gotten so used to seeing it there that it might take me a second to process exactly what's going on, but eventually I kind of get caught up with that. So name number 2 kind of much the same way. Noah Sewell's been there for a long time. He's there again here right now. Bearded Dog on YouTube was really hoping to get some new info on Noah Sewell. He's obviously a very popular top target. So for Bearded Dog on YouTube and some of our other commenters who want to hear more on Sewell, what can you tell us new about him today?
So Bearded Dog, some fresh intel, I guess, out of the kitchen, I guess, a little bit there for Bearded Dog and Brandon Adams or whatever. You might be able to grow a beard if you are clean-shaven right now before he makes his decision. Right now, he's focusing on his high school season. Remember how some of the information we had coming out of the Sewell camp was he was going to make his decision sometime before the end of his senior season? Well, now all of his focus looks like it's going to be on Orem High and finishing out his high school playoff run. Orem is now in the quarterfinals of the 5A classification in Utah high school football. There are 6 classifications there in Utah, and there are no visits planned as of yet. So he's taken one official visit to Georgia, one official visit to Oregon, and he's still at hope to get like 1 or 2 more officials. And so until that season happens, Team Sewell has their eyes on the prize, and that would be a Utah State High School Football Championship.
So this may be more of a sense of, instead of following the visits, following the absence of visits. That might tell you what you need to know about Noah Sewell, or at least give you a hint about what you want to know when it comes to Sewell's eventual destination. Name number 3, top targets for the class of 2020. Here on Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger. It is once again 5-star defensive lineman Jordan Burch. And Jeff, I think it was last week, or it's been sometime in the last couple of weeks, I thought you said something pretty illuminating about Burch. I want to come back to it. This is a guy that if you start chronicling all of the unofficial visits to Georgia, including recently being there for the loss against South Carolina, but adding that to all kinds of scavenger hunts, things like that, that Burch is one of those guys, if you really kind of go back and look at it, and obviously your archives at the forum at forum.dognation.com and on dognation.com give you a chance to do this. If you really look at it, Jordan Burch is a guy that's actually visited Georgia a lot more than maybe the average fan maybe realizes.
I think, Brandon, how many times have you visited Georgia this year? Maybe 6 or 7?
Something like that.
I mean,
I don't get to make it during the week as much as I'd like to anymore.
So, Dog fans, you got to remember, there's only 2 home games left in this season, and Brandon's already been to 5, I believe. Only 2 more left. I think Jordan Burch has been to Georgia 5 times already this year, so that's something that seems very telling, considering the follow the visit mantra. I would expect to see him at Alabama LSU along with every other recruit worth their star rating for that game this weekend. And LSU's now in the mix. South Carolina, Clemson, Georgia, Alabama, LSU, that's his current top 5. Jordan Burch having a very special season in that small school league there for the SCISA, which is the South Carolina Independent Schools Association. We talk a lot about how he plays all over the field, plays on both sides of the ball. He currently has more touchdowns. I believe he has 14 touchdowns as an all-purpose weapon on that offense. It's 6'5", 253. He has 14 than he does sacks. I think he's got 11 sacks right now for the Hammond School. So he's a guy that will not be able to enroll early. Hammond School is on a quarter system. You can't take blocks out of context of the academic year. So he's a guy that even if he ends up trending and signing and committing to Georgia, he won't be there or at any school until May or June.
Next name, 3 offensive guys to start us, I should say defensive guys to start us off, but we'll go offensive side for name number 4, Darnell Washington, who is involved in, I guess, a minor controversy last week. Haven't heard a whole lot more about that since then. Anything new to report on the 5-star tight end from Las Vegas?
Should be in Alabama on an official visit this weekend for Alabama LSU. He was on an unofficial visit last weekend for the Tennessee UAB game. I'm sure there was quite an environment there for that Blazers Volunteers game. Darnell Washington has recently suffered a broken wrist, broken hand during his high school season for Desert Pines. The controversy Brandon mentions was he was, I guess, ejected from a recent Desert Pines high school game where he was a little animated when it happened. So that's Darnell Washington right there in a flash.
Name number 5, top targets for the class of 2020, Zykevius Walker from Sly County in Ellaville, Georgia, one of those defensive linemen along with Jordan Burch. Dogs really seem to have targeted here. Anything new with one of the very rare in-state names on our top targets list?
Yeah, the only 4 commitments right now from the state of Georgia for the 2020 class, and I think the way it looks right now, barring a last-minute running back flip that would get Brandon really animated, it looks like Georgia might go stretch to as many as 5. potential commitments or signees in the 2020 class. So Zykevius Walker, been very busy. He's expected to be at Alabama this weekend. He was at Auburn the previous weekend on an official visit. He had some Halloween going on. He had some Schley County homecoming the weekend before that. He took a visit to visit those Mighty Gators in Florida for the Auburn game earlier than that. His 4 finalists, Georgia, Auburn, Florida, and Alabama. I would look for his decision to come by the end of this month, and I want folks.
By the end of this month, that's fun.
I want folks to. Well, you got 25 more days now, but something to think about there. When we mentioned Schley
Listen, at this
County,
point in time, people have been waiting for such a long time. They'll just take whatever they can get.
It's kind of like frothing at the mouth. Just put the carrot in front of them just a little bit more. With Schley County and Ellaville, something I want folks to kind of focus in on and remember is there are 5,213 people in the county seat of Schley County. Mm-hmm. It is the 8th smallest county in the state of Georgia. And for folks like our good friend Connor Riley, to put that into perspective, he had almost 3,000 students at his high school in Cobb County when he was coming up as a young Dog Nationer in training. So very small town, very small community, which has produced this fantastic football player.
Yeah, exactly right. How about the next name on our top targets, the class of 2020 on Before the Hedges presented by Kroger? It's Theo Johnson, the 4-star out of Canada. Johnson actually made some news this week by announcing his commitment date. Now, this is written in sort of Canadian style, kind of backwards. It took me a long time to figure out
that confuse you,
what
sir?
In the world he was even talking about here. But on November 18th, Theo Johnson is going to make his announcement. And listen, I'm an American patriot through and through, but I'll give you credit for this. This is a pretty cool maple leaf edit here from Johnson. But he says 18/11/19. He means November the 18th, 2019. He's going to be making his commitment announcement, as he says, #1 player in Canada there. So this is a pretty big one worth watching. Should Georgia fans be optimistic about this?
So first of all, let's harken back to that edit, because me, a fan of the creative arts, that's fresh, man. That is a clean edit. That makes me want to get some Canadian bacon or put it on a pizza or something like that.
Let's not get crazy, but it's a nice edit.
You've got
outrageous.
You've got the transparent, you got the mountainside, you got some shoreline.
Well done.
You got the kind of cartoonish thing in the middle. Theo Johnson, even with his autograph.
It's well done.
Very well done. So. Listen, with Theo Johnson, the thing here for Georgia was was it going to be able to hold serve from that good juju that they picked up from the official visit for the Notre Dame game? Some very, what's the term? There's a half full Georgia fan, and then there's probably a 9/10 full Georgia fan.
Sure.
They drew the connection that, okay, here's what Theo Johnson is doing. They're getting down on the Dog Nation forum and saying this. The week after Georgia finally feeds the tight ends for big plays in a big game, that big catch from Eli Wolf that's probably been referenced on this program at least 3 or 4 times already, they kind of drew the thing as, okay, after Georgia went heavy and hard in the paint with their tight ends, that's when Theo Johnson has decided to make his decision. Still going to take an official visit to Michigan. In my book, I don't think Michigan has been one of the core contenders here for a long time. Georgia, Iowa, Penn State, those are the schools. I know Brandon didn't like the taste of your morning coffee when you heard about those comments from Theo Johnson saying that he equated the whiteout at Penn State to a greater atmosphere than what he experienced for Georgia Notre Dame. And
I think it is a great. I'll give credit to State College and Beaver Stadium. I do think those whiteouts are pretty amazing. I'm sure it's not a surprise that he enjoyed himself there. I also think a lot of these Big Ten schools have just made more of a tradition and history out of throwing to the tight ends. If you had to ask me to fill out my class, I'd probably put Johnson in one of those Big Ten schools mock class, maybe even Penn State, probably more so than the other right now. That's not based on expert information. That's just based on what I think of as sort of an educated opinion, kind of an educated guess.
And to me, if it does become Penn State being in the school, I will think that the Nittany Lions have made up some ground over the last month when he said he was going to chew on all of it, see all of it, research all of it, and then figure out which one just left the best feeling in his gut. It's funny how you said whiteouts. Whiteouts. It made me think whiteouts.
Mm-hmm. Like the wideout, yeah.
Like the whiteouts in Penn State, and maybe they're trying.
As grown up in Gainesville, Georgia, have a tendency to say it white. White. That's kind of how we say it growing up.
We need to get a soundbite, a button of that about. So whiteouts, maybe they feel that they brainwashed them a little bit. Whiteouts, the whiteout at Penn State. We'll treat you like a whiteout at Penn State.
Yeah.
The other comment that came out of his camp when he discussed the whiteout visit was he said he has no questions about the way the tight end position will be utilized and featured in the Penn State Nittany Lion offense.
Well, there you go on that. How about next name? Top targets of the class of 2020. It's Dante Manning once again out of Kansas City. Jeff, this is a guy you've been telling us about a lot, and one of those guys that would seem to be still heavily in the mix for Georgia.
Going to make his official visit during that December, second weekend of December lane. Going to give a visit to Arizona State, Oregon again popping up again here with Georgia in the class of 2020, and also Arizona State, Oregon, and the third school was Georgia. Those three schools are going to get the official visit from Dante Manning in the month of December. He's already taken two, a former Oklahoma commitment. He decommitted because he didn't feel sure about it. I'm going to give this young man very high marks for on the field and off the field character. Play some Wildcat quarterback, some receiver, some jet sweep guy, is also a lockdown cornerback for Dante Manning. He calls himself the locksmith.
I like that.
The reason why he calls himself the locksmith rather than lockdown cornerback is he decides when you're open. So he will unlock you and allow you to be open for your quarterback in order to bait a throw downfield. So then he can do what All-American DBs do.
It's quite a comic book hero backstory he's got going on there.
He does.
I don't mind that.
That's why they call him the locksmith.
That's not too bad. How about next name? Top targets of the class of 2020. So about Arian Smith, another one of these guys out of the state of Florida. Lakeland, also a town where, you know, the University of Florida has had some success before. I always get Lake City and Lakeland confused. Either way, the point is, where do things stand with Arian Smith right now? Did he like the fact that Georgia beat Florida? I guess my question.
You got to remember, he sees himself as a dual scholarship athlete, or at least a dual SEC athlete.
Track guy.
He will be a track guy, and some would say very accurately that Arian Smith's legs run faster than Brandon Adams' mouth in the first 5 minutes after Georgia defeats Florida.
Not easy to do, but that may very well be true.
And, you know, folks, throw an egg at the screen if you want to, but you're looking at these films, you're looking at these highlights here, and you know there's some things out now, these algorithms which will track how fast these young men are moving in terms of miles per hour. Some of Arian Smith's plays, he's well over 21, 22 miles an hour. Dare I say it, he will be the fastest potential skill player for Georgia in the Kirby Smart offense. It would be a nice little match race there. Imagine a Georgia offense with two guys out wide that can stretch the field like Mecole Hardman did for Georgia. Not just replacing the wheels that Mecole Hardman brought, but having two guys there on the field at the same time that have that after drive or that overdrive, that top gear that's even faster than the one Mecole Hardman brought the Bulldogs.
Fun to think about for sure. How about the next name below Smith on our top targets? Another one of these potential tight end type prospects. Also another, I guess, former Oklahoma, or maybe current Oklahoma commit, the best way to say that, from Mikey Henderson. Dante Manning, the former OU commit. But Henderson on here out of Carrollton, Texas, played some quarterback for his high school team. For Georgia, though, if he were to come here, likely a tight end, but a very athletic one, correct?
Yeah, are you trying to speak that into the universe for a decommitment from Oklahoma?
Well, listen. You go back and read some of the things he said. It certainly doesn't sound like he's long for Norman.
So here's some new information, and gosh, people might want to sit there and go, Jeff, are you going to tell me this now? Are you going to do this now? But Mikey Henderson, and you know, to his credit and to his absolute right, Mikey Henderson has told me that he is not going to take that, I guess it would be come to Lincoln meeting or come to Norman meeting with Lincoln Riley until the end of his high school season. I think Ranch View in Texas, just outside Irving, Texas. Whenever I hear Irving, Texas, it makes
the old stadium, right?
It makes me think of Pat Summerall, John Madden.
Yeah.
Irving, Texas. Some big-time football players are going to be playing on a Sunday afternoon for that one.
Because the new stadium's not in Irving, right?
No, it is not.
Yeah, Jerry's World, not in Irving.
But that one's in Arlington, Texas. Yeah. But with Mikey Henderson, he's told me some kind of piping fresh intel, we might say, that he's not going to make his decision in terms of going to Norman, sitting down with the coaches and discussing his concerns about utilization as an H-back in the offense. He said that's not going to happen until the end of his high school season. And I think Ranch View right now is 8-1. They're playing the 10th week of their season. They're hoping to play at least 2 or 3 games of the playoffs. So I would think that the Mikey Henderson decision, whether it's an immediate flip or it's a decommitment and then keep looking around, it's Georgia and Oklahoma there for Mikey Henderson. And that is not expected to take place anytime soon.
So picture this real quick, and I know we got to, kind of keep it moving here, but just picture this for 1 second. Driving up to Oklahoma to tell her you don't love her anymore. I mean, that's, if there was ever like fertile soil for a great country song, heading up from Texas to Oklahoma to tell her I don't love her anymore. I mean, that is like every good country song, like George Strait, Merle Haggard. They all kind of have that same vibe of heading up to Oklahoma to tell her I don't love her, to tell her it's done, tell her we're through. That is a pretty good beginning premise for a country song.
That's very theatrical, and I like that. But let me take your screenplay a little bit better, and it may be like a Broadway play, Oklahoma, where you're going back something from Gershwin. But I think if we're true to the story, he's going up to Oklahoma to see if she can make him fall in love with her again.
Yeah, that's not as good a song.
I would say Make Me Fall in Love Again, Oklahoma. That's probably what's happening here. Maybe that might be a Carrie Underwood song. She sings so much about Oklahoma.
Well, listen, the one she sings about killing her dad or something like that. Remember that one? Whatever that was. I'm not even going to get into that. But nonetheless, next name, top targets, class of 2020, presented by Kroger. Quarterback on the list here. Yeah, we've talked about him before. CJ Stroud out of Rancho Cucamonga.
Say that 3 times
Cucamonga. Either way, he's going to be coming to Georgia. You told us this on Dog Nation Daily this week. Going to be coming by to see the dogs here pretty soon.
Yeah, I think he's taking an unofficial for the Texas A&M game. His buddy Justin Flo will likely be there with him. They've kind of grown up balling, or at least hanging out, camping together in the out there in Cali together. Now, this guy won the Elite 11 this summer out in Texas.
Pretty impressive.
Harrison Bailey was there. Carson Beck was there. Bryce Young was there, and fortunately, Brendan, he's not going to check your box for blazing speed. I think he's a 4.89.
Sure.
He's only like 6'2.5", so he's not even your big, tall pocket passer. But,
no worries. No worries.
Georgia, especially considering what young Fromm might do with his Sunday versus Saturday decision at the end of the year, Georgia simply has to kind of load up what's going on at the quarterback spot. He's a guy that will give Georgia an official visit later on as well. That's what he's telling a lot of media reporters. The other thing with him, though, is he might, and this is definitely projecting, he might be the only piece of unfinished recruiting business potentially left for Georgia past December the 20th, past the early signing period. And then again, to be completely clear, past those All-American games on the Under Armour game and the All-American game on the 4th. There might be C.J. Stroud, yes or no. Can Georgia bring him in? He might be the only guy that is left on the board for 2020 during that stretch run of January and all those visit weekends or whatever. Something to think about there. Carson Beck plans to show up for Georgia in December and enroll early and be there for bowl practices, not just January mid-year enrollee, but to be there for bowl practices. And again, that Carson Beck train is now going down the tracks, kind of like one of those takeover trains.
Right.
He's got Mandarin High School in the playoffs. They actually have a better record in the regular season than they did a year ago when they won the whole stinking thing in Florida's highest classification. And I think the numbers on Beck in his last 4 or 5 starts, he is now 15 touchdown passes to 1 interception. So he has definitely righted the ship there. And the fact that Georgia could get Beck in December for bowl practices only bodes well for his future at that position.
Let's see who just missed out on making one of our top targets for the class of 2020. The guys that just missed out on top 10 status. Let's check in a few of those. So the list is getting shorter here now. A couple running backs still on here. Don Chaney Jr., he's obviously Miami commit. Zachary Evans, the uncommitted young man out of Houston, who's a bit of a wild card all the way around. And then Xavier Henderson, who's kind of been paired with Arian Smith so much because of the fact that Clemson's interested in both those receivers, and I guess by proxy everybody else, Georgia included, will be there as well. Kind of a shortened list now of names beyond the top 10.
Well, our one-person focus group was always lampooning that long list of honorable mentions there.
Sure.
So we tried to, give the public what they want a little bit. You see Zachary Evans there. Xavier Henderson, to me, it seems like it's Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, and Florida there for him. I think what Arian Smith and Xavier Henderson do with their recruiting moves will affect one another, at least the boards at those schools. Don Chaney Jr. is the guy that would be probably at this point the ideal. If Georgia could bring anybody else into the class to pair with Kendall Milton, that would probably be the name. He's got the skill set, and maybe the Miami Hurricanes aren't faring the best right now in their current college football season.
Excited to announce here on Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger, that Kroger Chef Jr. is making a return to select Kroger stores in November. How about this creation? Fiesta corn salad. Now, the experience includes a recipe card, an apron, a chef hat, a recipe box, and measuring spoon. When you do this each and every month, you get new kitchen tools to add to your kitchen arsenal. Well, it's measuring spoons this month. You can go to this website, KrogerChefJr.com. Now, the word junior spelled out, KrogerChefJr.com, and find out more details about that and to register for your class today. All right, we're going to do our weekly six-pack here coming up in just a little bit. We will take your comments, and Jeff will try to stump us with some trivia questions here coming up. Before we get to that, though, Jeff, one of my favorite things we do each and every week here on the program, a chance to look at some online chatter, a chance to kind of find out what's being said by recruits, about recruits, and kind of where the 2020 class may go next.
Yep, we got a lot of chatter. We got a lot of highlight video gold on our online chatter right now, and let's just jump right into it because we want to have a streamlined, hurry-up, giddy-up show. First of our online chatter, we're going to start.
MJ, huge game, huge victory out here against rival DeMatha, 24-20 victory. What thoughts, what feelings are going through your body?
Mikhail Sherman, I guess.
Yeah, we wanted to take a little bit of the soundbite there with Mikhail. He had someone that spoke to him on the sidelines after a huge win against DeMatha, which puts St. John's College and the Cadets really in good shape in the Washington Catholic League playoffs.
So let's hear some more.
Because they do everything they did, playing both ways. But at the end of the day, we can't thank God enough. We prayed in that chapel. I prayed for a victory, and that's what He blessed me with. So I thank Him.
And you all were able to hold Marshawn Lloyd, kept him in check all but for one run today. Talk to me about your defense.
That's our defense. I can't say nothing more, nothing less. That's our defense. We already know that game plan. We already know that's their weapon. And what you got to do to be the soldiers, disarm them with the sword. And that's what we did.
You seem emotional about this victory. Why?
It's senior day, my last home game. I don't want to, and I'm tired of going home with my head down. What I always do, I say I want to leave this field with my head to the high and filled with triumph, and that's what I'm doing right now today. There's those 4 games, those 4 back-to-back losses. I don't want to feel that no more. I only want to feel one loss. So everyone, and I invested too much time, too much endless summers, endless spring, endless winter, endless fall, just to come out here with an L. So Saturdays, Fridays are paydays to me, and my payday is that dub.
Gonzaga, next week. What are your thoughts?
Business.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm probably as guilty of this as anyone. Sherman's been committed to Georgia for such a long time. He almost, and I hate to say it this way because it's not an accurate representation, but it just ends up feeling this way. It's almost like you forget about him. You forget how good of a player he is, the game film. Even, he's dealt with some injury during his high school career, but when he's been healthy, he's been a phenomenal player. You see there in the interview, he's also kind of just a determined force as a leader off the field. He's been one of the leaders, I think, for Georgia in terms of a Pied Piper for the 2020 class, holding a lot of these guys from spread out geographic areas. He's held them all together. MJ Sherman, I believe, much the same way I would have said about Richard LeCount before he joined the program a couple of years ago, has all the look, the makings, the feel of a big-time fan favorite. He has been out of sight, out of mind because his commitment status has been locked down for such a long time. This is a really fun player to have a part of this program. And for Georgia that's recruited the linebacker position as well as it has, Sherman belongs right there with every name that you can mention.
So I want folks that always ask this question, and it's a legitimate question about B.J. Ojulari every week, and does Georgia have a chance? Or I think Aziz somehow gets asked this question a lot of times when he has media availability about his brother. The reason why B.J. Ojulari wasn't as prioritized or doesn't feel like there's as nice a fit or an opportunity there at Georgia, part of it has to do with Mikhail Sherman, because Mikhail Sherman, look at that guy. That is a future, not only will he be a future SEC Media Days type guy, but I think very quickly, maybe year 2 in Athens, he could be a face of the program. Look at the way he represents himself. Look at the way he handles himself. I'll never forget this. The word I most often associate with Mikhail Sherman, there's 2. One of them is athletic, even at 6'3", 235 pounds. The second one is passion. I'll never forget in my media career, I asked him a question, what is your why? Why do you play this game? And he gave me a 700-word answer that detailed all the many things that propel him, that pumps his heart. That heart right there definitely doesn't pump Kool-Aid, about why he plays the game.
Let me get a couple comments on this. Brett Hunter says, kid knows what he wants. Brooke Ann Childer is agreeing with the Richard LeCount comparison, saying every class needs a guy like LeCount. Sarah Carpenter says, love him right now. Robert Shore says, maybe one of my favorite recruits ever. Well-spoken, confident, energetic. Love him. Get more like him. John Benton also making his own comparison, saying he could be a little bit like a Nolan Smith for the class of 2020, which is not a bad comparison there either. Jay Squillis calling him a born leader. So a lot of folks in our Facebook comment section certainly liking what he brings to the table. How about go ahead?
Yeah, two quick things. Everybody forgets this. Even my man over here. He's one of Georgia's only 2 5-stars left in the class, and he is the nation's number 2 outside linebacker. And that right there, Mikhail M.J. Sherman, is the highest rated commitment on the board for Georgia at this time.
Yeah, absolutely. How about the next name on our, not next name, but the next piece of online chatter here?
Look at this, Brandon. And I mean, one of the days me and you are going to have to get in a high school game and in a booth so we can cover a game and we can get your reaction to that.
Look at that. I mean, I just love, he wants contact. Look how low he goes, pad level, seeking out this contact. I'm sorry, who wants to tackle that? I know he's a linebacker at the college level, but as a high school running back, who wants to get in front of that freight train? Now, my advice would be not to.
And first of all, this was what his coach says. He really believed he could play all 11 positions on that side of the football. Let's run that back turbo one time on that first play of his highlight. One more time. The first one, folks, he breaks. He goes through the middle of the gap. That's one of those inside zone plays everybody loves to see Georgia run. And look at that. That's 1 man. 2 man, 3 man. One guy's straight up with him, 4 man.
Look at that.
These guys are straight up. Their face mask is in his grill, and they're not getting him on the ground. And Brandon, just when you think, it's kind of like, just when you think we're done with Noah Sewell highlights, I got one for you. One more for you.
All right, let's see this one. So 23 seconds to go in the first half. Let's find out what happens here. Oh, look at that.
Over the shoulder.
A little catch. Pretty exciting action right there. Sewell doing a little bit of everything.
You will not believe 265 pounds can fly, but until you see him, run that route.
Yeah, Sewell. Listen, he's earned every bit of status he's getting. That is a unique specimen, to say the least.
I think we've got another highlight coming up right now. We got some more of C.J. Stroud. And Brandon, I want you to look at this.
That's a cool video effect there.
Shout out to CLA Films, because that's what he tweeted out, common visuals. But look at this one. Talk about making dudes miss.
Fortunately for a lot of coaches, this is what real life is like in terms of how quickly quarterbacks disappear.
Look at that. Even though he threw it to his check down, Brandon, and not downfield over the middle to his tight end.
Still pretty good. Still a good play. Still a very good play.
Where's number 7? Somebody on the Dog Nation forum pointed out that Georgia's number 7 on offense will likely be vacating next year.
That's a very, very point. That 7 might be available. 7's not a bad number for a quarter.
C.J. Stroud. We're hitting you with some highlight gold this week on Before
I like
the Hedges.
that. That's a good-looking young man.
Next up, I think we've got, this guy, right?
Oh, yeah.
Look at him outrun some angles right here, Brandon.
I thought he was slow. He didn't look too slow on that. Oh, look at that.
Somebody snowbirded, was waiting on him. And, waiting at the goal line. That's not what you want to do when the train's coming through.
Look at him just running past people. Now I realize this is not the 85 Bears he's playing, but look at that speed, that agility.
So look,
I like that.
And this is what you like about a future leader, face of the program, and a spokesman. Look at Kendall Milton right there. He said that after the Georgia-Florida game on Saturday.
It's a man after my own heart, right there.
I think that guy's got over 4,500 likes on that tweet right there. And then somebody, Brandon, is doing the God's work, is what you might say. They're out there in Clovis, California.
That? That's really good. Good job, whoever that is. Chris Milton tweeting that out. Bulldog love showing up in Clovis, California. By the way, Chris Milton, the family may not know enough about sweet tea yet for my taste, but they've already learned how to spell dog, D-A-W-G. So from that standpoint, the Milton family is doing just fine.
And I think, I'm pretty sure I'll get an amen from the glass. I think Connor Riley might rate the Milton family mac and cheese amongst the top 5 he's ever encountered in his life.
So they're also already fitting in well with the Southern culture when it comes to that, too, which is also nice to know.
So watch for this. I've got some intel that when the Georgia coaches come out in December for their in-home visit, and they go out there and visit him in Clovis, California, I think that spread that's going to be grilled up, some charred animal flesh, is said to be legendary. Georgia coaches don't know it, but they're definitely going to have to let that belt out after they get through eating at the Milton House.
Radiant Noah wants to know, just a quick comparison here, how do you compare him to DeAndre Swift as a high school back?
Two different total high school backs. DeAndre Swift was about 5'9", 5'8.5", and about 210 pounds. DeAndre was so athletic he could probably have been a 4-star cornerback on his high school team. A lot of catches out of the backfield. Kendall is 6'2", some change, 220. Much more upright running style. Has a lot of Adrian Peterson to his game a little bit. They're just kind of two different backs. Kendall is the thunder back, more like the Chubb back, more like the Gurley back that Georgia has featured, where DeAndre Swift classically has always been the better lightning back, and Georgia really doesn't have a thunder lightning comparison, at least not in the literal sense this year in the 2019 backfield.
This is apropos of nothing. Can you imagine someone that's not a big-time football fan or not a big Georgia fan, and they hear you compare? I mean, he's a little bit like a Chubb or a Gurley. Like, if you didn't know those names, that almost sound like you're not giving them a compliment. But obviously, within the context of Georgia football, those comparisons work out really well.
Yeah, and I think folks they need to notice about Kendall is he has really good freshman, sophomore film, still very good junior film. But then there's a difference, and a lot of that has to do with the guys up front giving him room to run and giving him holes. But I think right now, when you see Kendall get after it on the football field, this is a guy that clearly has his eyes on Saturdays, and he clearly has his eyes on, I won't say he has a chip on his shoulder, but he's clearly out to prove something with his final high school season.
I've said this on Dog Nation Daily. You give me, if you gave me my choice about a Kendall Milton coming to Georgia as a 5-star or a Kendall Milton coming to Georgia mad that he wasn't a 5-star, no disrespect, I'll take the mad Milton over the other version of Milton any day of the week. Come here and for 3 years make him show why you should have been a composite 5-star all the way along. That's a great deal for everybody. Kendall Milton will get the last laugh on payday, and he'll get a chance to dominate some would-be tacklers at the college level.
Yeah, there's some flip sides to this. A lot of people think that the media attention and the spotlight on these young athletes kind of makes them have a sense of entitlement. Well, maybe this might be a counterplay to that, where maybe the lack of respect for a high school athlete, at least among look, folks, watch him run. He's going to be a top 3, top 4 back in any recruiting class he shows up on. But when they come in with kind of feeling like that the whole world thinks they're not as good as some other guys out there, that kind of adds some fuel to the tank in maybe an inverse positive way than somebody being told they're wonderful all the time.
However, I completely agree with Jacob O'Neal. If you're going to have like the really good macaroni and cheese, which apparently that's what the Milton family's serving up, how are you going to eat the macaroni and cheese and not have any sweet tea to go with it? Like, that doesn't even make any sense to me. That doesn't make any sense. You can't drink it with milk. The macaroni and cheese already got milk with it. It's one of the ingredients in the macaroni and cheese. Anybody at Kroger will tell you that.
I have nothing to add to that.
I mean, how are you going to eat the macaroni and cheese and not have the sweet tea with it? I think that Jacob O'Neal's 1,000,000% right about that. We have other online chatter.
We should. So this is.
This is. I'm glad we're talking about this.
Chill Out Jay, and actually, Brandon, I know that it's not so much a Georgia situation here because he just never connected with Georgia.
Yeah.
Actually, connected with Georgia Tech more outside of that top 6, top 7 range. For Georgia's got other targets in the 2020 class it likes better, but more of a. This is a guy that Jeremy Pruitt has to get to do something with the great players, the rare great players that come out of the state of Tennessee. And there was Auburn and Rodney Garner coming in and taking one Jay Hardy, a very athletic defensive lineman. You get him on the basketball court, likes to shoot the threes, likes to nail the threes as well. Got a little Euro step to his game at the same time, but it's going to be a future defensive lineman at
So
Auburn.
here's my very quick take on this. Everybody always wants to act like Gus Malzahn, the Auburn program, is on the decline, and that Malzahn in particular is heading for demise. Pulling a defensive lineman like Jay Hardy is not exactly the kind of thing that programs on the way to demise typically do. Now, I don't believe Auburn compares favorably with Georgia or Alabama or LSU. They are a pecking order below that. But to this day, Florida's gotten all the hype. Where is Florida a better program than Auburn? And they beat them head-to-head, obviously this year, but that's in your home stadium. Auburn's got a freshman quarterback. But if you want to look at the long-term trajectory, what does Florida have that makes a better program than Auburn?
We made this an Auburn. We made this a Florida thing there.
No, I'm just saying. I mean, but my only point is like the Auburn program, I think, is sneaky in better shape than some people realize it is. I think the Jay Hardy commitment's an example of that.
I mean, another example is look where they're standing with Tank Bigsby in the class of 2020.
And those are the kind of recruits that programs on the demise get.
And both coaches are seen as offensive guys, but they're really leaning on their defenses for a lot of their success.
Yeah.
And, the thing that comes to my mind about this story is not the Florida comparisons or whatever. The thing that comes to my mind about Chill Out Jay and Jay Hardy making this decision is just Auburn's defensive line. If you ask me to go back for a story for Dog Nation publication and think about some of the biggest recruits that Georgia has missed over the last 4 years that could have sincerely affected the bottom line output of this football team, Can you imagine what Georgia's football team would look like now if they had a Derek Brown and a Marlon Davidson on that defensive line? Remember,
big gets.
Georgia was in there with both of those
gets.
guys. And one of the favorite Kirby Smart stories I've ever seen is last year in Sanford Stadium after the Auburn game. You can see why Kirby Smart recruits so well, because he sought out Marlon Davidson, who had a connection. He had a connection to him when he was recruiting him for Alabama, and then when he was considering Georgia. And Marlon was a guy that those guys hugged, and those guys tapped it out and slapped each other on the back. And you could tell that there was something really sincere there, that Kirby values guys that he got to know, even when they didn't choose his school, and he was still able to appreciate the way he plays the game and what he's meant to his program.
Got trivia coming up, weekly six-pack, more online chatter before that?
I think we got any online chats left, or we got two more, Brandon. Look at this guy, number one. That is a highlight film for one Justin Robinson.
Okay.
Now, check out some
I've heard good things about what he's doing at ELCA.
We haven't been able to show you a lot of him this year, but we wanted to make sure we did so this week. High point
pretty catch now.
Ball. And again,
he's a pretty athlete for sure.
Justin's not playing every game because Elka's beating the brakes off teams by like 35 points on the average every week. He's not playing a full game. But look at that one, Brandon.
That's really nice.
Going to get that
really
one.
Really nice.
Georgia is going to like this 6'4". He's got it. It's going to have to fill the
6'4".
Going to have to fill that cager role. And look at this one, Brandon. This is not this position he'll play.
Ooh.
But
that's a clean hit too. That's a very clean hit.
He plays both ways for Eagles Landing Christian Academy. And again, go up and get that ball, young man. High point that thing. That's a guy that's going to have to do some cager things for the Bulldogs in the future.
Not every big hit that a wide receiver does on defense ends up being a clean hit, but that was a clean hit.
Last but not least, we might have saved, shall we call it, the best for last. Welcome to the Caleb Williams experience.
Brandon,
is he going to take this to the house? Look at him pointing out his blockers.
How about that? Nice uniforms, too.
This is like a playground thing. Look at him. He has no gloves, no sleeves, nothing. No wristbands.
I like this. Boy, different camera angles? My gosh. This is quite the production there. Pretty impressive.
Max Preps. Zach Poff does a great job covering national media for Max Preps. And can we show Caleb just one more time for
I don't
folks
mind
at
seeing
home?
that again. That's pretty nice right there.
You remember that Nike ad where it said the Mike Vick experience? Look at this.
Yeah. Look at that.
There's flag.
Was it a hold? Because I saw the flag coming in the back.
I think it was the face mask.
Oh, all right.
He's got some downfield blocking. He's used to having his receivers block downfield. Look at that, Brandon. That's only about 90
Pretty
yards.
impressive. Cool looking campus, too. Big City High School is kind of a cool thing.
Something to get in your wheelhouse, Dog Nation, as well. This Saturday night, when Georgia's taking on those amazing Tigers from the SEC East, the Missouri Tigers, Saturday night in the District of Columbia, in the DMV, you know what's going down?
What's that?
Caleb Williams and Gonzaga College High School versus Mikhail Sherman and St. John's College.
Any media for that?
That one is going. No, it's not going to. I don't think it's going to be live or streamed availability. But that one is going to be going on at the same time Georgia Missouri is getting down.
Drew Odom, by the way, compared the hit a moment ago to Justin Robinson's hit to something Alec Ogletree would have done in the high school level, which is not a bad comparison all the way around. That's really fun stuff. Good stuff. You know what else is fun here on Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger, our weekly six-pack, where Jeff shares some trivia for us. We'll do that coming up. First, let me remind you that when you gather the family together, dinner's done thanks to Kroger and Simple Truth. On a meal that includes savory roasted chicken, a salad kit, mashed potatoes, and a baguette. It's all just $10. And when you buy all four items, that's the savings that you get when you use your Kroger Plus card. So check that out. Kroger Plus card, a great thing to always have with you because you get great savings at the Kroger near you. And how about saving time as well, making sure you got dinner ready to go. Listen, when we all get at home in the evenings, everybody's hungry. I'm hungry. The kids are hungry. My wife always wanted to make sure she's got a good dinner on the table, and Kroger is certainly a huge help in being able to do just that. With that said, I'll let you set the table with some weekly trivia, some six-pack stuff, as you're to stump us here once again.
Brandon, 5 for 5 last week with one.
I believe so.
Was that 5 for 5 last week, Connor?
I believe so.
Missouri week. What do you think you're going to learn about today, Brandon?
I'll put some Missouri-related questions.
We got some Missouri-related
A little easier because they've only been in the league since 2012, so it's a little easier to hopefully try to get some of these right.
And with that, on to the trivia.
There we go.
Which statement is not true about Missouri recruiting?
Right.
Not true about Missouri recruiting. A, the Tigers have signed a higher-rated player on the 24/7 Sports all-time ratings than Georgia.
Okay.
B, Missouri has signed 15 players from Georgia over the last 4 recruiting cycles.
Okay.
C, the Tigers recently held the same national team ranking and SEC ranking for 3 consecutive years. What that means, simply a translation there, is they were the same number nationally and the same number rated in the SEC for 3 consecutive years.
Okay.
D, Mizzou has signed the fewest number of blue chip prospects of any SEC team the Bulldogs have faced this year.
Oh, that's a good question because you got to obviously make the comparison to Vanderbilt there. I could see Missouri having signed a really highly rated player at some point in time. There was who's the 5-star that I'm getting concerned that came out of the state of Missouri not too long ago? I don't think he didn't go to Missouri, but
Did go to Missouri.
Oh, did? Oh, that's right.
He ended up going to Missouri.
Yeah, that's right.
Oklahoma to Missouri.
I could have seen Missouri signing that. Let me see this one more time. I'll make a quick answer here. 15 in Georgia the last 4 cycles. That certainly makes some sense. Same national and league ranking. That makes a lot of sense. I'm going to say that Missouri does not have the fewest blue chips. I'm going to assume that Vanderbilt has fewer blue chips than Missouri. I don't feel great about my answer one way or another. I'm going to say D, that Missouri's not the fewest blue chips.
We gave you a little degree of difficulty right there. What is Facebook crowd saying? I'll see if I can get
Eddie Hackney reminding us of Dorial Green Beckham, the receiver's name.
DJB, that's right.
Drew Stevens also talking about the big defensive end they've had. They've had a lot of good defensive linemen. I'm not quite sure how many of those were great recruits, though.
Ilian Jolly has it right on YouTube. You're right. The name of that receiver was Dorial Green Beckham, who eventually ended up at Missouri.
So Jacob O'Neal joins me at D. Drew Stevens is on A. Clint Haynes is on D. So Jacob and Clint with me down there at D. So let's say that's our answer.
I think we're going to have to hit that.
Oh, wow.
You got a buzzer for that one? The one that says Mizzou has signed 15 players from Georgia over the last 4 cycles, that's inaccurate. They've only signed 9 Peach State prospects.
So Vanderbilt has more former 4- and 5-star recruits than Missouri does. That's actually very interesting. That's information worth knowing right there.
And then they have signed, Dorial Green Beckham was higher rated than Justin Fields.
Yeah, when it comes to like the highest rated individual recruit, you don't have to be in an elite program to sign one single elite recruit. That's not necessarily how that goes.
And the other thing that that made sense there out of that question is they had the same ranking nationally 3 consecutive years, which led to the same SEC ranking 3 consecutive years. Can you know how hard that is to do, Brandon?
Yeah, certainly odd.
Very odd. Second question, B. Brandon's currently 0 for 1.
Yep.
And here, this harkens to what we're talking about,
All
Brandon.
right.
What is the current blue chip ratio of football signees between Georgia and Missouri dating back to 2016? You got some low numbers there, my friend.
Yeah, 4, 7, because we know Georgia's 73, 4, 7, 12, or 19.
Chronological order, by the way.
I do appreciate that. That satisfies me. 7 just seems too low. 7 seems awful low. I'm going to say it's C, 12. I'm going to say it's 73 to 12. There's no way they've only had 7 4-star guys in their program. Drew Roman says it's easy, though. It's B. So he thinks it is 7. It's got to be 12, right? Ro Hawkins says C. Chandler Wright says C. Jay Squillis also happy to have him in numerical order. As opposed to chronological order, which I got yelled at for last week. Alan Verbanchik says C. Drew Stevens says it's either B or C. Drew, you're not helping that much. I'm kidding. Drew Odom says it's C. He may actually be related to Barry Odom, so he might know. Steve Bean says C. So we're going C here.
Sometimes the simplest things you say make me laugh. Maybe related to Barry Odom.
So we're going C. A lot of C's.
A lot of C's. Well, everybody that says C, well, they take a big-time buzzer for that one.
Oh, no.
Brandon, your correct answer is B, 7.
7 former 4- and 5-star. How is this team in the SEC? They got like 9 fans in the stands, 7 4-stars in the field.
I believe, to get to their 7, Brandon, I actually had to give him transfer Kelly Bryant, who was rated as a 4-star transfer. That's paltry numbers. So
that's really amazing.
7 is not their lucky number for recruiting.
By the way, the
7.
YouTube people are furious with me for not taking enough YouTube answers. I apologize to Brian and Stewart and Bearded Dog and Radiant Noah. All of our answers are there on YouTube. Y'all act like I don't show y'all enough love, but I do. I do. Georgia Bulldogs Nation brings up a good point on YouTube that, this is a team that, for the most part, blew out South Carolina. And they got aided in the final score because they got a pick 6. Sometimes that can sort of manipulate the perspective of the game. But to have this little measurable talent and beating a team like South Carolina that has had some recruiting success, this is this Missouri team is odd. They are an odd duck.
Defensively minded team. They play to their strengths. They got a defensive minded head
But you
coach.
say that at one point in time they're averaging 38 points a game. I mean, at one point in time, this is a pretty high-powered offense. I mean, as recently as a couple of weeks ago, they faltered a little bit just on the basis of the fact they can't play away from Columbia. But they were actually scoring a lot of points at one point in time.
Let's move on to the next one. This is a rare occurrence. Brandon always does so well in these things, but right now he is 0 for 2.
I really am.
Number 3, what has been the average recruiting ranking of those Mizzou classes since 2016? So we told you 7. That's an average of two blue chippers per year, Brandon.
Yeah, so it's not 37. It's worse than that. It's actually semi-hard to have the 37th best class in the country. I guess I'm going to say 55th. Is it worse than 55th? I guess I'm going to say 55th here.
I'm going to give you one little helper on this one.
Yeah.
Just because they don't sign 4 and 5 stars, you can rate really highly as long as you gang up on a lot of highly rated 3 stars.
You know who's done fairly well with that is Bobo, actually. Bobo has collected a good number of 3 stars there. Now they're probably lower rated 3 stars, but you can kind of do that. I mean, obviously you wouldn't say that if you didn't think I was wrong, but I'm still going to say 55th.
55th. Your answer is C. Elite GB has B, maybe. Stuart Nix says B. Bearded Dog has a bunch of D's. Radiant Noah has C. Shane Bentley, C. Guys, Chevron Hannah, C. Your correct answer was what, Brandon?
I said C.
C for the record. Let's give them another buzz.
Wow. Not doing well this week.
42nd.
Yeah, I could have said 42nd. I could have said that. Said 55th. There's not a huge difference.
So here are their last 4 classes, because I didn't try not to give it away in the previous answer. 2016 they were 43.
Yeah.
2017 they were 43. 2018 they were 43.
Yeah.
And then 2019 that was their high water mark. They were 37th.
Yeah.
And they always finished number 13 in the SEC that year. And to see that, folks, I'm going to give a little bit of golf clap there. For
They're
Missouri,
winning way more than you think they should.
especially in the Southeastern Conference. Number 4, I know Brandon's probably going to get this one. He's got to get off that schneid this week.
Rough going.
Did he trade an 0 for 6 on the next week's trivia for a win down in Jacksonville? Is that what you did?
Maybe that's what it is. If so, that was a fair trade. Jay Squillis 2 of 3 so far. Timothy Burrell 1 and 2. He says.
This is a true false. 50-50.
Elite GB got it right.
50-50. The Tigers once scored more points in the SEC championship game than any other SEC East representative this century.
This is a good question because when they got beat bad by Auburn in 2013, that was a high-scoring game.
Huge game.
High-scoring game. Georgia scored 28 in 2017. You know, I'm going to say the answer to this question is true. I'm going to say that their blowout to Auburn in 2013 was higher score than any East team this century. That's a pretty good question. I'm going to say that it could be true.
Okay, folks, just to look at it and get a brisk pace to our day. If you said true, then you get a bell. Ring that bell. So this is the second all time. You have to go back to 45 points for Florida and that tremendous Florida team in 1996. Yeah. Mizzou scored 42 points in the 2012 SEC championship game.
Well, it would have been 13.
13th season, but it's So that year is impressive because not only did they score the most points with of this century in the SEC title game when they scored 42 points, they also allowed the most points in SEC history, and they gave up 59 points to, I believe it was Cam Newton and those Auburn Tigers.
Well, 2013 would have been Nick Marshall.
Nick Marshall. 2010 was the Cam Newton year.
Stuart Nix, by the way, knew that it was 59 points, so good job by Stuart there on that.
We got our fifth arrow in the quiver. Which one of these things is not true, Brandon? Again, keyword not true about the Georgia-Missouri all-time season. And I'm allowed to call them Mizzou on second reference, right? Doesn't everybody call them that one?
Yes, by all means.
I know we're having an informal show here. A, not true again. The Tigers have won 2 SEC East titles this decade. B, prior to this decade, the two teams had never met.
Okay.
C, Georgia has only lost to Mizzou one time. That was at home. D, Georgia has a 14-12 edge in all-time conference titles. That's against Missouri.
Yeah.
And then E, finally, Missouri has averaged 28 points per game in the last 3 meetings with Georgia. Okay. Which one of these is not true?
All right, so this is good. So what is this, 19? So that's 9. So that's 18, 17, 16. E is true because in 2017 they came here and scored a good number of points. It was a relatively high-scoring game last year. 2016 was kind of a field goal game. The conference titles thing, 12 seems like a lot of Big 8 titles for Missouri because that's where most of their titles would have come in the old Big 8. That seems like kind of a lot in the same league to have Oklahoma and Nebraska, but maybe that's true. Only lost to Missouri one time. That was at home. That seems like it could have been right. That was obviously 2013. Two teams had never met before this decade. That's the one that I feel like is wrong. I'm pretty sure that Georgia played Missouri in like some bowl game going back to antiquity. So I'm going to say the one that's wrong is that Georgia played Missouri prior to 2012. That in some like random, like probably pretty good bowl game, but like random bowl game a long time ago. Looks like Ilian Jolly agrees with me on YouTube.
So folks, if we were going to do a highlight reel of Brandon's performance in the six-pack trivia for tonight, kind of like that Caleb Williams highlight right there, I think we would give his deduction power, his deductive reasoning for that question. Because you know what, folks? Brandon Adams got it right. That bowl game he thought was way back in the nether regions of the world, that was the 1960 Orange Bowl, where Georgia beat the Tigers 14-0.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I am surprised to know that this doesn't matter, but 12 conference titles for Missouri, I'm sure Pink will win a Big 12 at some point in time, but 12, you probably have to go back to the old Big 8 to get there. I'm just surprised that Missouri would have won 12 conference titles.
Yep, that and 14-12, you have to kind of, they're almost pretty close to Georgia in conference titles. That's about the only head-to-head they're good at.
They're just not close in the same conference.
Yeah, exactly. Sixth question, Brandon.
Right,
you got one more, and you got to go for get to a 333 average, right?
There we go.
Which pairing of famous names does not include two people who are connected to Mizzou or the city of Columbia?
Why the pairings? I still don't understand.
It gives me more variety of answers. It gives different options. It's like an RPO here, Brandon, of questions.
So just so I understand, because this confuses me every week. So there are two people in each answer, one of which is either not connected to Missouri or not connected to Columbia.
So here's the best way to phrase this is one of these answers, which will be the one you're looking for under the does not umbrella, contains one person that's connected to Mizzou and one person that is not connected to Mizzou. All the other answers have two people that are connected to Mizzou. So we're looking for which one does not include two people.
That's basically what I said. So John Hamm's a big Cardinals fan, so I'm going to assume that he's one here. Dawn Wells, do like Marianne, a big fan of hers back in the day. So I'm gonna let her stay for right now. Sam Walton's from Arkansas. That's your answer then. Sam Walton's from Arkansas.
You don't want to look at Tom Berenger and Sheryl Crow or Carl Edwards, your NASCAR driver, and Max Scherzer?
Hey, Sam Walton's from Bentonville, Arkansas.
Connor, give it to him. He thinks he knows it all. Give him that big bad buzzer. Sam Walton graduated from Mizzou.
Oh, geez Louise.
He's famous alumni. And then Marianne, John Hamm is a Mizzou graduate.
Yeah, he's a big Cardinals fan.
Marianne from Gilligan's Island is not connected to Mizzou.
But y'all know this. I mean, I figured Sam Walton went to the University of Arkansas. So where's Dawn Wells from?
She's actually somehow connected to the state of Missouri, but she's not from. She's not a Mizzou graduate, and she's not a Columbia, Missouri person.
Well, there you go. I do like Marianne. So even though
were you a Marianne guy or a Ginger guy? Which one?
Marianne all the way around. 8 days a week on that. So even though I don't necessarily love the format of the question, I will allow it.
Okay, a smart guy. Brad Pitt, true or false, connected to Mizzou?
I guess true because he wasn't the right answer.
He's true.
Yeah. Otherwise, it would have been the right answer. All right. I know we're running a little bit late here, but let's put some time on the clock. We'll do. Do you got time to do a full 5 minutes? Is that okay? You got time for a full 5? Let's do a full 5 here, and we'll get ready to roll out the door. We're not that late today. We're not that late. They're laughing at me. Let's do a full 5 minutes. But you're going to start asking. The problem is it takes y'all 2 minutes to stop talking about the trivia. So get your recruiting stuff back in. We'll do something. I do want to talk about this because Jason Hester and Drew Odom both mentioned this earlier. There was the national report about Derek King, the Houston quarterback. The prediction from, Pete Thamel from Yahoo, that he's going to eventually go in the transfer portal and that Georgia would be a potential landing spot. All of this is obviously, the prerequisite for this would be that Fromm goes on the NFL. But if we stipulate for a moment that Fromm does leave, you think Georgia's in the Derek King business?
I think they're in the graduate transfer quarterback position, especially, that C.J. Stroud name was the other name we brought up for a quarterback. And Folks, right now, a lot of the tea leaves point towards Ohio State with him right there. He had a great visit earlier this year, an unofficial visit earlier this year to the Buckeyes. And you got to think Georgia, hoping to make another national championship run every year. Graduate transfers have been very good to them.
Yeah.
I think the thing that's very dicey is a graduate transfer quarterback, which is somebody that hasn't been leading and sweating and bleeding with your program for years and years and years. That's the hard part about using the portal for the face of your offense.
Jay Squilla says, better prospect, Gunnar Stockton for the class of 2022 or Caleb Williams for the class of 2021?
Oh man. Well, you got to go right now. I mean, Gunnar's great. Gunnar's a number 2 overall prospect in the country. In the 2022 rankings, according to 24/7 Sports. I love both of these guys. I mean, these guys have a better scouting profile coming in my opinion, than Eason, than Fromm. You know, Caleb Williams. Let's face it. Everybody looks at Caleb Williams and says, "Oh, that's Georgia's another crack at a Justin Fields." I would disagree with that statement because Caleb Williams is a guy that has had the keys to his offense for all 4 seasons. And he's going to have about 50 high school starts by the time things are done. And Caleb went to the line as a freshman with the ability to call his own plays, make his own adjustments, and make his own checkdowns. And Caleb Williams, I mean, this is like kind of comparing Deshaun Watson and Cam Newton. These are, when you ask somebody that does this for a living to compare or to bring Justin Fields and Caleb Williams in there, I don't think the exact player parallel for Caleb Williams is Justin Fields.
GB2 says, is the Justin Flo upcoming visit to Georgia a surprise?
No, I mean, we say this a lot. You're going to get 5 visits. You're going to take 5 visits. A lot of players feel that they've earned 5 visits. And Georgia's always been one of the top 2 or 3 schools for Justin Flo. He had some great visits, too, earlier this year to Georgia during the unofficial period during the spring. It's just that school that calls itself the Tigers and plays in Death Valley has a particularly good pull to him right now.
By the way, speaking of the Tigers, the question came up here earlier. Shane Bentley, this is the way LSU's recruiting right now. Is there a chance they overtake Georgia when it's all said and done in the 2020 class rankings?
Well, they're already overtaking Georgia right now.
Finishing that way.
I tell you, Georgia's got to finish strong. Here's what I did hope you guys read the story we put out. I call it giving birth to one of these things because what I do is I include everything from A to Z, Z to A on the 2020 class, the timelines, the top targets, where the recruits are being pulled from, where the offers were made in the class. And it led off with the which guys are mid-year enrollee candidates for Georgia. And with looking at everything right now, for Georgia to overtake Clemson as the number 1 school in the country for the 24/7 Sports team composite ratings, they would have to get 3 out of those 4 big 5 stars left on the board. So that would be Kelee. That would be any combination of Kelee Ringo, Noah Sewell, Darnell Washington, and the 5th one is Jordan Burch. So we need 3 of those 4, and they will just have a sliver of they'll edge past Clemson and they'll edge past LSU for the number 1
Drew
class.
Roman has a good question. Drew's question is, who fits the system better, Mikey Henderson or Theo Johnson?
Well, the system is different. That's kind of an ambiguous statement for me. Listen, I think Theo Johnson, out of all, I say this a lot, I think Theo Johnson, if you had to ask me which one of these 3 guys, and I'm going to throw Eric Gilbert in there as well, I say this a lot, but that's the quickest and simplest way I can say this. If every one of them has a great college career and plays near the apex of their ability, I think Theo Johnson is going to be the best college player and pros prospect out of the 3.
A couple more quick ones here. Tyler Scott Benson says, why wasn't Malik Carr never mentioned more?
I didn't view him as a consideration.
Well, not by you, just in general.
You mean mention more? Well, because I think
Georgia.
Malik Carr, Malik Carr, remember, that was Oak Park High School in Michigan. And he kind of got the feelings of the good juju feelings about Georgia back in the Justin Rogers time. Remember when we were talking about Justin Rogers as a guard, and then he drifted to defensive tackle in the summer prior to his senior year? I think Malik Carr I think he's a great fit for Purdue in the Big Ten. But another thing with Malik Carr, stop me if you've heard this before, but although he had a tight end body and tight end skill set, he fancied himself as a receiver.
Oh, yeah, you hear that from time to time. We're going to get ready to wrap up here. Clay Dyke says, if Georgia were bringing a transfer quarterback, do you think that Carson Beck would flip?
That's a really tough question. I think that just depends on the confidence level that Beck has going in there about his own ability. I think the timeline is going to be really hard here, Brandon, because as much as I hate to speculate about something like this, the Fromm decision, yay or nay, won't happen for some time. I mean, it probably won't happen until he's played his final game at Georgia. That's just the classy way he has always went about his business at Georgia, and his family have went about their business. So that's going to come in January. And then Carson Beck already plans to be at Georgia in December going through bowl practices. That's something to think about that right there. And the other thing, too, though, is listen, Beck doesn't mind. Like, he didn't expect the job to be bequeathed to him at all.
Yeah.
Beck expected to come to Georgia, hopefully, to have an apprentice year, an internship year underneath Jake Fromm, learning the ropes about the right way to play the game in the Georgia offense.
Really quickly, Chuck Pearson wants to know about Javon Dexter. Is that over? Is he all Florida now?
Well, I think Dexter was a guy that was going to have to look at the Florida season and view it as a disappointment. And I don't think he can do that now, regardless of what Georgia just did to the Gators in Jackson.
And then Casey Cochran wants to refresh the commitment timeline here. Jeff, you told us earlier in the show that Georgia could be on guard for 2021 tomorrow morning. The next name in terms of a commitment date for 2020 is Theo Johnson. Certainly it's very much up in the air if Johnson were to choose UGA. And then you start thinking end of the month for guys like Zykevious Walker, right?
Zykevious Walker, potentially Noah Sewell. Those guys now want to make their decision at the end of November, sometime in November. Mikey Henderson wants to make his decision at the end of his senior season, which after all the playoffs are over. Same thing for Noah Sewell. The rest of the guys in the 2020 class, go back forth and do your rewind or job button to the beginning of our program. Those guys all want to make their decisions at All-American games.
All right, we appreciate you making your decision. Be with us here today on Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger. For Jeff Sintel, Dog Nation's recruiting insider, I'm Brandon Adams saying thank you so much for being with us. Tune in tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. for Dog Nation Daily. Jeff will have you covered for all the recruiting information you need at the Dog Nation Forum at forum.dognation.com and at dognation.com. Busy week getting ready for Georgia and Missouri, and plenty of recruiting news that could follow along in between those gaps. Y'all have a great evening. Thank you so much for being a part of Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger.